There it is.
Welcome, everybody. Greg Peterson coming to you from Urban Farm U, and I am here with Janis. Hello, Janis.
Hello, everyone. I'm Janis Norton. My location is Two Piece in a Pod Farm.
Tonight, we're talking about drip tape, and I mentioned Scott Murray a little earlier today before we started recording. He's one of my mentors, and about a decade ago, he turned me on to this thing called drip tape. And drip tape is, well, we'll jump into what it is and isn't here in a minute, but it is absolutely my favorite way to get my garden beds watered. And leave it to Janis. She put her own twist on it.
Greg, what is drip tape?
All right. First of all, it is not drip irrigation. Drip tape is a lay flat commercial watering system. So that tape you're looking at on the screen there, when it fills up with water, it goes round. And when it empties of water, it goes flat again. That's why they call it lay flat. It is a precision watering system. It puts water exactly where you need it, and it is perfect for home gardeners. So here's the big reasons you want drip tape in your yard. It pressurizes evenly for equal watering. Drip irrigation systems put more water out at the beginning of the system than they do at the end of the system. Drip tape pressurizes evenly before it starts dripping. So the front of the line of your crops are going to get watered as much as the back of your system. And so that's the biggest reason we love it. The laser cut holes self-clean. That means every time the water comes on, any salts that build up, they wash away. The holes are spaced evenly, and they're watering every 6, 8, 10, or 12 inches along there. So you can count on that water being even. It's easy. So it's like Tinker Toys to install and repair. It'll save you at least 50% on water, probably more. It helps reduce your weed growth by keeping the water where you want it. And you can install it up to 600 linear feet for even pressure. If you have to go more than 600 linear feet, you put in different zones. Yes, Janis?
I was going to say, one other thing that I just realized is that we have longer lifespan of drip tape than some of the other options that are out there, like soaker hoses. They last longer.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to use drip tape for 5 to 7 years in the sun in Phoenix at the Urban Farm. Here's a few limitations. You need to put it in straight. You can't curve it or make it turn a corner. It has to be straight. So that's something we just have to work around. Animals will and can chew holes in the tape. I've had a couple of situations where that's happened. Some people will put water out for the animals. You can also bury it in mulch, bury the tape in mulch, and it works really well that way as well. It is easy to repair, so you do have to pay attention to it. If you if you're digging in your garden, I can't tell you how many times I've been digging out in the garden and I put the pitchfork right through it.
But if you do, it's so easy to fix.
It is. We have a simple connector that helps fix that. So this is what we're going to cover in the next 20 minutes or so, the install process. And the way this goes, and we'll explain all of this, the way this goes is you got your water supply, your spigot, your pipe coming in. You put a timer in place. This turns on and off so that it automates. There's a valve. The valve controls the water. Number 4 is the most important thing you need to know about a drip tape system, and that is that it needs a 10 psi pressure reducer in place. Absolutely, you cannot go without that. Then you put in your 5/8 poly to garden bed. That's plastic piping. We'll show you pictures of that, and then you lay out your drip tape.
I think we're going to change number 5 is 5/8 inch poly tubing to destination because it's not just garden beds.
Got it. All right, so here we have the water supply. It's a spigot. These are both spigots. Sometimes you can direct connect to underground PVC. This is a full pressure. And if you are in the city or on a well, it's likely your PSI coming out of this, or pounds per square inch, is around 50 to 70 PSI. This will blow the socks off of your drip tape. And I'm going to say this a lot tonight because I've had people try drip tape without it, and you absolutely need it. So, and then on the right, we're going to talk about this in a little while. On the right is a chlorine filter.
I wanted to see, take a
ahead.
look at this spigot on the right. If you're, as you're going to be creating some systems, some home systems, if you're at a 45-degree angle coming out with your spigot, a simple another 45-degree angle diverter can give you your 90-degree down option.
So that's the water source. Then there's the timers. This is 4 different timers. A timer basically is the clock that turns the water valve on and off. You don't have to have a timer. If you're doing this manually, you can just hook a hose up to it and turn it on.
And in that case, you would be the timer, and that'd probably be your watch or whatever device you use to set your clock.
Exactly. So this is 4 different examples of timer. We're going to talk about the top center one here in a little while. And the thing about timers is they can be set to multiple zones. The Lawn Genie on the left will hook up to 6 different valves, which gives us 6 different zones we can send water to. So when
the same with the X Core, that'll do 6.
Mm-hmm.
The orbit at the bottom, the beehive, I believe that one can go up to 8.
All right, nice. So what
and
I
it's
did
also
was
Wi-Fi.
oh, nice. Yeah, they do make them that way now, don't they?
Yeah.
So the one on the left, the Lawn Genie, what I did with that when I was at the urban farm, I had 2 zones out in the front yard, and each zone is connected with a wire coming off of the Lawn Genie to a valve. And the valves look like this. So that single valve there on the left was one that was at the urban farm. It was one of the zones in the front yard. And then you can see the one in the middle. This is a picture from Janis's place. That is 2 different valves. So that is sending water to 2 different places. Now, these kind of valves need a timer to hook up to. The timer valve combo on the right, they are together. So the water goes into it and comes out of it. And
now,
then
the reason why the difference between the one on the right is that one is specifically for an area that doesn't have electricity, because the single valves are usually controlled by a timer that needs some sort of electrical support to be able to control the timer. If you do not have electricity in an area and you just have a water supply, some batteries, and one of these orbits, which you can get with 1, 2, that one there has 3 zones. You can get it up to 4, I think.
Oh, perfect. All right, so that's the valves. We have the water source, the timers, the valves. Here is the very, very, very important 10 PSI pressure reducer. Now, we sell these. The water flow goes that way. This is imperative in the system. I had one of our people email me with a picture this week that showed the drip tape blown out. And I said, do you have a 10 PSI pressure reducer in place? And turns out she didn't. So these are very important.
If you are talking to anybody, even somebody in the irrigation stores or the big box stores, if they tell you that your valve can be controlled to set the pressure, that's not enough. You definitely want to make sure that it doesn't go above 10 PSI. And the only way to do that is with this simple tool.
Yep, exactly. Now it is threaded on both sides. And given we don't know, and we sell the 10 PSI pressure reducer, but given we don't know how and you're going to hook it up, because everybody that hooks them up differently, we don't have the parts. So what we suggest you do is you buy, if you get one of our bundles from us, you take the 10 PSI reducer to the hardware store and you tell them what you want to do, and they'll sell you the thready parts to go in between because there's so
Because
many
it'll,
different iterations of it.
yeah, and it'll make sure that by getting that way, you're going to get the right little part to connect this to what your system is.
This is one of the ones I had at the urban farm, bottom left, that's water coming in. Then you have your automatic watering valve. And what I want you to notice, that 10 PSI pressure reducer is after the valve. If you put the 10 PSI pressure reducer before the valve, it will mess up the valve. So it has to go after the valve goes the pressure reducer.
And what that gets you is 10 PSI going to your garden or wherever else you send it. Another way of doing it is having multiple valves and having a single pressure reducer.
Mhm.
So the one in the middle here, this is 3 valves going off to the right. This is actually a backward picture, so I can do this. We've got water coming in from the source. Then we've got the individual watering valves, which are currently in this picture not hooked up to the timer. So that's why the electrical cords are just tied right there. We've got one zone that needed a pressure reducer for the drip tape. So that one zone, the black pipe in the back, the black poly tube, is going with the PSI to, it's actually to my orchard, not to the garden.
Right, so the other 2 valves that we're looking at are for drip irrigation systems, not for
Yes.
drip tape, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I actually have the poly tubing shooting off. The top and the bottom ones are going to individual zones in my yard that are having some sort of drip irrigation, but not drip tape. We are going to install the white PVC tube on the right is what is going to be a 4th zone.
Oh,
But I wanted to
amazing.
call attention here on, just clicked on the picture there, there's a shut-off ball valve. I will tell you, when you're putting in your valves, if you can put in extra shut-off valves in your system before you're doing your actual zoning of your valves,
Mhm.
the ball valve gave me the opportunity to make changes and additions without having to shut off the whole water. The more you can put those in, the better. And then I've got this nice clear space up on the top for my future timer, which as soon as I get my electricity back there, that'll set that up. And the white pipe is my future 4th zone. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm going back and I am manually controlling this to set it up the way I want for my irrigation, but I will be having a timer installed shortly.
This is
It's
a
gone.
filter valve pressure reducer all together. Was the water from the source, then you have your chlorine filter and the timer and valve combo and 10 PSI water coming out.
The chlorine filter would have been better to have it after the timer. I'm putting a little bit of high pressure. If this was controlled with I have a spigot going into this setup, so I don't have full pressure going into the chlorine filter, but I didn't have the space to have the chlorine filter after the valves. So yes, it reduces the life of the chlorine filter slightly, but I opted for that so that I could have room for the 10 PSI reducers.
Now we have drip tape on the right. It's a flat tape. And on the left is poly tubing. The poly tubing is a harder tubing. The poly tubing is what's going to be taking you from all of the stuff we just talked about to your garden beds.
It's basically the step, if you're planning irrigation, the first choice is very hard PVC pipe, and that gets your water from your source to your location in a straight line. If you need to bend going around your yard and your trees, and for regular drip irrigation, polytubing is a common tool. You find it in most big box stores. But the drip tape has a very specific purpose, amazing benefits. We wanted to identify them so that you could see the difference while we're talking. And also in the rest of the slides, we're going to have the polytubing highlighted in red and drip tape highlighted in blue to help you identify the difference.
The install process goes like this. Install the valve, the timer, and the pressure reducer. And then you're going to run the 5/8 polytubing to the destination beds. And you can run it 50 or 100 feet out to your garden beds if you need to. In the 5/8 tubing, you can put T's, you can put elbows, you can put on-off valves for beds. We've got a picture of that here in a little while.
I want to step in here. If you're doing poly tubing to a specific zone that is going to have drip tape, do not put any drip irrigation on the same zone. Don't put drip irrigation on your drip tape system.
And then there's optional on-off valves at the entry to the garden beds. We should have a picture for you of that in a little while. Like I said, you lay the poly tubing across the head of the garden bed. You'll see pictures of that coming up. And then you lay out your drip tape down the length of your garden bed. And usually we do 1 foot apart on the drip tape lines. You know, if you have a poly at the head of the bed, and you can go 8 inches apart, 12 inches apart, but usually 12 inches is good. All right, here's your poly tubing with the on-off valves. This is a system that I used to have at the urban farm with a hose end connector. So this one, I just used to hook a hose up to it. Remember, if you're going to drip tape, you have to put the 10 psi pressure reducer. So you got the 10 psi reduced water coming into the source. You got a T, you got 2 on-off valves. What you can do with the on-off valves is if you can put on the same zone, you can put different beds. And if you have a fallow bed, you just turn off that bed. All right, and when we say lay the poly tubing across the head of the bed, this is what it looks like. You're going to see the video here in a minute of the where the picture from the left came from. Those look like they're about 8 inches apart. So the poly tubing has the orange arrow pointing at it, and the drip tape is running off to the left in both pictures.
Now, having this picture here gives you options, because if your garden bed is already installed, you can run your poly tubing up the side, across the side of the, if it's down in a low bed, you can just run the poly tube next to it. If you're in the process of building your garden bed, or if you have the opportunity to, you can actually run your poly tubing straight up in underneath and up into the end of your bed, which is what the picture on the right is. I wanted to have a multiple demonstrations of different ways that things can be done. So in my raised bed, I had the poly tube snuck up under the edge and run up the bottom, through the top, and over to the end. And then we added an end cap. And this is one that my guy found at the local hardware store, and he threw this on the end. This is a simple way to close the end of the 5/8 inch poly. Or we get Greg's way.
Thing over and use a piece of red wire. I use the red wire. I like it because it stands out. So that's a super simple way. Next, I'm going to lay out the drip tape. And there's a special tool that punches the poly tubing. Picture on the right is the connector.
It's called a poly to drip barb, or we just call it a barb.
Barb, yes. And the bottom is the one that inserts into the poly tubing, and the top is where you attach your drip tape, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Once you punch the barb, you're going to cut your drip tape to length and leave 6 inches on the end for folding it off. And
yes, so when we're going to talk about this later, you can do a fold to secure the end of your drip tape, or you can end up doing an end cap on that as well.
And this is how you're going to connect the drip line. So you got your poly tubing on the left, your barb in the middle, and your drip tape on the right. You insert it in, and this is a twist. So you push the drip tape all the way in, and then you twist it counterclockwise, and it cinches down on the drip tape.
Yeah, there's a spinning part to the barb. So you spin it all the way close to the poly tube, slide the drip tape on, and then you twist it out so that it grabs a hold of the drip tape, and you twist it all the way out so it's nice and secure.
And if it drips a little bit there, that's fine. You just plant the plant there.
Now, Greg, I really think that this particular slide is like the beginning of a dance move. We're going to do the drip tape and fold. We're going to double bend at the drip tape, and then we're going to slip on a piece of drip tape to secure.
Great. So yes, absolutely. I love that, Janis. At the end of your drip tape, so this is 6 foot, 12 foot, however long your bed is. You're going to take a 3-inch piece of the drip tape. You're going to bend it once. You're going to fold it over once. You're going to fold it over twice. You're going to fold it over 3 times. So you get it done like that. And then you're going to, technical term, you're going to scrunch the end.
I love scrunching.
And you're going to slide that 3-inch piece over it so that
You
what
just
you
open it up and it will slide in.
Yep, exactly. And you just slide on it right there. And the next slide will show us what it looks like. It is really that simple. And then what I used to do at the urban farm is I put a stake in the ground and use that red wire again to lash it. You just bend the drip tape at the end and use the red wire to lash it to the stake. And then the other thing we do is about every 6 feet, you want to take a loop of the wire, just a U-shaped piece of the wire, and push that in the ground to hold the drip tape in place. Because as it warms up and cools off during the day, what will happen is it'll creep a little bit. And this is our end goal. This is a picture from Murray Farms, and the drip tape is coming into the bed from closest to us. See, Lemonade said I have a 3-foot wide raised bed, so we'll need 2 tapes per bed. Usually on this is a 3-foot wide bed here, you put 3 tapes. And a 4-foot, usually put 4, maybe 5, depending on what you're growing. So it's something you get to play with.
Now, what I love this is Murray Farms is a real live production farm, and he's using this out in his field, his actual growing area where he's producing crops, and then he's using it for his own personal gardens too. So
that's a cool video.
Hey, it's Greg Peterson from the Urban Farm coming to you from Longevity Gardens with Jake Mace. Welcome, Jake.
Welcome to my place.
Actually, you should welcome me, exactly.
Greg, we just did a video where we set up this raised bed and filled it with soil, the exact soil mix that I use.
Yep.
Folks get the link to that in the description or comments below, but now what are we doing?
Nice. So I get this question a lot. People want to know about drip tape. This is not drip irrigation. This is drip tape. This is what farmers use.
Okay.
And the cool thing about drip tape is that it's pressurized evenly throughout the system. The problem we get a lot with drip irrigation is that the pressure at the beginning of the system
is different
than the pressure at the end of the system. So
and usually at the end, it's a lot lower pressure.
Exactly.
And those plants don't get the water.
Right, exactly. So basically what we have here is we have our incoming 5/8 inch pipe.
And that comes from the grid. So this is after somebody's already got the water coming from the grid to their raised bed.
Exactly.
And you're now going to tie this pipe into a drip tape system.
Right, so we're just going to slip it on here. Now, interesting thing, this pipe gets really stiff. So if you're doing it and it's too hard to get it together.
Or if you're doing 100 of them at once.
Or if you're doing 100 of them at once, exactly. Go get a mug of hot water, boil water, and you can soak the end in hot water and it softens it up so nicely. Now we have the water coming in.
Okay.
We haven't sealed off the other end of this guy, so we have to seal off this other end. Now they sell attachments for the end pieces.
So you could hook up an attachment that will go to another bed.
Exactly, so you can just chain them on.
Or if this is the end of your system, you can cap it off.
And here's how I cap it off. It's really simple.
You just fold it.
I just fold it over.
I mean, those end caps can be expensive. They can add up if you're doing 100 of them. So
exactly.
That'll save you hundreds of dollars.
Right. So one of the things that I use this pink wire, and this is just pink electrical wire, and I use it instead of
one of these.
Instead of one of these.
Well, these cost a lot of money.
They do.
These you can buy in a big roll.
Right, you just buy this by the roll. We'll actually have this cut as our pop-up nursery as well.
Oh, okay.
But here's the reason I use them. Put that in the ground next to it.
I know for a fact that over time, that disappears.
That disappears, right. And the pink's never going to disappear.
So you can see it, so you can do adjustments and improvements.
Exactly.
And
so
fix it and stuff.
I've gone to using only this at the urban farm now. I've gotten rid of all the other wires and everything. So take that, wrap it around there real good for me.
Okay. Like this?
Yep, just
and this way?
twist it. Yep, twist it tight as you can.
Tight.
That works. There's really no wrong way to do it. And then kind of twirly it maybe. Yeah, there we go.
Just start making the pressure high, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're good.
So this is what it looks like, Greg. It's like super flat, and it's not sticky like tape.
No.
It's just a flat piece of irrigation line.
They actually call it lay flat tape.
Okay, lay
and
flat tape.
what happens when it fills with water is it fills up to a tube.
Right.
And then every 8 inches, there, in this particular one, every 8 inches there's a hole,
Wow. Okay.
and that hole
That's
lets
enough
water out.
to let the appropriate amount of water out.
Right. So it'll put, you know, if you put it on for 20 or 30 minutes, it'll put a ring of water around your plant right there.
Nice.
This is really interesting the way the connectors work.
Mm-hmm.
So this connector is going to go into this pipe right here.
The regular 5/8.
The regular 5/8, exactly. We're going to take the drip tape and we're going to put it on there while this is open, and then we're going to kink it closed. And what it's doing is it's cinching over that drip tape
And locking it on.
and locking it on.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
It's pretty good.
Okay, so now we've got the first piece done.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to attach it in here.
Which you could just take some sort of nail, but this is a much better tool for that.
Yeah, this is a $7 tool. It just pokes a hole in the pipe.
Okay.
There we go. And then we're going to work this in there. Again, a jar of hot water or a mug of hot water will help. Okay, so now we're going to go down to the other end here.
So the water comes through this main line.
Main line.
It will. Some of the water goes in this strip tape,
Yep.
and some of the water goes in this strip tape.
Exactly.
Greg, I know you, and I know that you like to garden economically.
Yes.
Which means on the cheap,
Yep.
but still effectively.
Absolutely.
So you figured out some ways to cut costs and keep the costs low with this, which is using a stick or a stake and a unique Greg Peterson urban farm method.
Yeah, well, actually,
So
I got
show
this
us.
from Scott Murray, so
Oh.
I won't claim this one. I've got this extra here. I'm going to cut it off with a few inches on the end. All right. Now, and we take an extra piece of this.
Okay.
I'll need about 4 inches.
Hold on to that.
Hold on to that. And all we're going to do is we're going to fold it once. We're going to fold it twice. You're going to open that up. And you're going to slide it over the end here.
So it just, you folded this part, now it just stuffs in there to keep it folded,
Yep.
basically.
There you go.
Let me,
You just slide it on.
Oh, that's cool. So that's
Yeah.
like totally like rustic, you know,
There you go.
that's like an everyman's way of doing it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And now no water will get through there.
Right. Yeah, so grab the stake now. All right, you're going to put the stake in the ground. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lash this and lash this
With these guys.
with those guys. So go ahead and...
I'll do this one, you do that one. How
All
about
right, cool.
that? And we just fold this up and just
Yep.
tie it around like
There
this.
you go,
right?
just like that.
I've been to your house, Greg, at the urban farm, and you've got all your garden grown with this method.
I do. This is what I love. So, and then the last thing we do, so we stake them at the end down here like this. Okay. The stakes hold them taut because, you know, as they heat up, they'll expand and contract and like that. And this
Sure.
way they don't move down at the ends. And then I'll use my U-shaped wire, just like so.
To make it the shape you want it.
Yeah.
And now what you've done is you've taken this main line and you've tied it into my garden that
Right.
already has irrigation to it
Exactly.
for this video, so we can turn this on. It should work for the audience watching.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. There it goes. It's working good.
Now
Yep.
they're kind of like a tube,
Yep.
and the water is just coming through. And now
Yep.
the plants that we plant in this raised bed will find that water as they grow.
Exactly.
I like it.
And I found that they last for a very long time.
That's the thing. People always make you nervous, make you think that your irrigation is not going to last or it's going to get clogged. But you
Right.
found that this lasts and does not get clogged.
The batch in my front yard has been there for like 5 years and it's still going great. And the other thing is, because of the way they laser cut them, they don't clog. So when it pushes another batch of water through it, it clears out the hole, so the holes just don't clog.
Because sometimes some minerals can clog it up, but
Yeah.
you found that this doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen here.
Wow, that's cool.
And we'll be setting up bundles of drip tape, so it'll come with drip tape, it'll come with the end pieces and the on-off valves.
So like a pre-thought out system.
The pre-thought out system.
That's great. Thanks for coming over.
Yep.
People are always concerned and have questions about how to irrigate their garden.
Yeah, and this is a great solution.
Awesome, awesome.
You know, that video is how many years old now? And it hasn't aged.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That's why I like playing it, because we explained everything up to that point, and then we just jumped in with this video, and it shows it real time. So thank
And
you,
how-
Jake. And
at that point, your front yard irrigation, drip tape irrigation, had been in place for 5 years.
At least.
It was still great after that for another, what, 5
Couple
years
years.
before you moved? So now let's go to thinking outside the garden box. Greg calls it the Janis Effect. So
And what that means is Janis always takes something from that we're doing and makes it better, which I love.
I am obligated to let my brain go and sometimes just enable to stay sane. And one of the things I had was a concern with my clay soil and the fact that clay soil has a slow draining capacity, and I really needed to get water over in a very large space in my backyard. And I didn't want to keep having doing bubblers and everything. I wanted it to go slow and wide. So that went for me instantaneously drip tape. I want to put drip tape over the nice large section of my orchard so that I could water my trees slow and over the whole space, because I was also growing stuff under my trees everywhere in the orchard. So I opted to try this. And what I did was I took the poly tube to the short end of my orchard area, which was like the back third of my yard. And I went just across the short end. And then off of that, I put in barbs, and I ran barbs down so that I could have the entire 60-foot length of my backyard covered in drip tape, which means I could put up to 10 60-foot lengths and still be okay on this one zone. I didn't have 10, I think I only had 8, but I'm doing great. So these pictures here are pictures of the drip tape as it snakes across part of my orchard. And as you can see, I have them on either side of the trees going the lengthwise across the orchard. In some places, I had them about 18 inches apart, maybe a little bit wider, the zones, just depending on where it fit for where my trees are. My trees are somewhat in a straight line, but not completely. So it worked very well with the linear version, the linear needs of the drip tape. And when I turn it on, I can turn it on a nice slow drip. It'll feed the whole section. And I run it because of the way that my soil is so clayey. I will run it for 4 or 5 hours and then let it go, turn it off. And the next day or 2 days, I will do it again. And that way I get a good flood type of irrigation method on my yard, but in a slow method that supports all the trees. And all of these pictures here are on my yard before I put down another layer of mulch. My drip tape is visible if I pull the mulch back. If I don't pull the mulch back, it is protected under a layer of mulch. Can't see it right now. Again, here's the end of the line. The drip tape went right up next to a tree and this volunteer artichoke plant who was very happy. And now I ran outside to take more pictures for y'all to show you what I was looking for. And I laughed at myself because you can't see any of the drip tape. It's all covered in mulch, this nice, beautiful woody mulch. This is a picture looking from the west side going east, and you can see how the drip tape just kind of snakes down between the trees and happy flowers. So that was my tree version. This is Murray Farms. He is an organic farmer who grows food and sells it. He has the drip tape lines set up like this. So he's got 2 rows of his crop, and he will just turn it on and take care of his whole section there. And you can see the stakes that he has at the end. So this is when you can actually see everything and not have it in between the growing season where everything's growing up. But once the plants grow and take their growth spurts, you won't be able to see the drip tape because they'll be protected by all the green.
What we do have for you, and what Janis and I have perfected over the
You know what? I wanted to jump in right here to start sharing some other items. So we are going to come in here and I'm going to show. Hold on. Trying to get to the right page. Greg, where are you? Did you disappear on me?
No, I didn't, because we had more more video there to play. You ended it a
Oh.
little early.
Did I?
Yeah.
I thought this was the part where we were skipping.
Nope. Why don't you go ahead and turn it back on? And let's,
Okay.
if that's okay, because we talk about the chlorine filters as well. That's one of the important pieces. So let's go ahead.
Okay. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. We're good. Sorry about that, kids. And we got some great questions coming.
Yes, we do. I've seen those.
Starter kit. And can you tell us what's in this kit, Janis?
Well, you know, when we were starting to put it together, we tried to figure out what was going to be needed for an average garden. So we started with a generous idea of a 4-foot by 25-foot garden bed. And this is what you would need. Most people do not have a 4-foot by 25-foot, but they do have something a little smaller, a little narrower, maybe longer, but this will work. With that, you would need maybe 5 barbs. We threw in 1 repair coupling and 100 feet of drip tape and the essential pressure reducer. You get all of that and the drip tape instructions.
There you go.
And it all comes together.
So we sell it as a drip tape kit that comes with all the parts you need, or we sell them as individual parts. What we have available is the stuff that's hard to get a hold of. The stuff that's easy to get a hold of, like the poly tubing.
Which is also really bulky to ship. Yeah, just the parts that are a little challenging to find. We got it together. So we've got 100 feet of drip tape. You fit your needs, 5 barbs. But if you need more, because maybe you have 2 garden beds and they're half the size of what you would need, you still already have the 100 feet of drip tape. You just buy some extra barbs. But then you're only needing, adding on what you need to customize what you need for your set. You might not need an extra PSI reducer, but if you do, let's get you just one instead of having to buy a whole starter kit.
Yeah, exactly. And if you spend $50 or more by the last day of the month, we'll throw in an extra 5 of the poly barbs. So you'll have extra poly barbs.
Ta-da!
So there you go. And the next slide. So we have something really important to talk about next, and that is these chlorine filters. What is chlorine for? Chlorine is for killing microorganisms, which is great for our drinking water.
Especially considering how much of our drinking water is running through city pipes. They need to keep it clean.
Exactly. So that's a good thing right there. However, it's notoriously bad for soil. And a healthy soil has 5 components. If you've been in any of my classes over the past 10 years, I talk about this in ad nauseum. The 5 components are dirt, airspace, water, or moisture, organic matter, and everything that's alive in the soil. When you add chlorine to your garden beds, that chlorine kills the microbes in the soil. So what we have to do is we have to take out that chlorine out of the water. We have one solution for your spigots and for your drip irrigation systems. This is the filter that we have available.
KDF filters are so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And what they are known for is reducing and removing contaminants in your water, the pollutants. The most important is the free chlorine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can let water sit out and the chlorine will eventually evaporate, it'll process out in the air. However, that's not what's happening with the water you're putting in through your shower or through your hose onto your garden. It just doesn't have the time to completely come out, especially on those times when your city has increased its chlorine load to try and fight some sort of contaminants. But there's also other, toxic heavy metals that are coming through some of our pipes, and these do reduce those. Up to 99% of water-soluble lead can come out in a KDF filter.
Really? I did not know
That's
that.
what I'm getting.
That's good. Okay, let's show them a picture of it. You've already seen a couple of pictures of it. So this is the hose ready one on the left. We include brass, so it just goes right on your hose spigot, or the one for your shower or inline irrigation system is on the right, and we have both of those available. Whoa, there we go. That's the one. All right. Are you there, Miss Janis?
Too many buttons on too many different screens to show this.
Right.
Right, here we go.
So the reason we wanted to replay that one is because Janice and I did such, I'm patting ourselves on the back right here. Janice and I did such a great job of presenting that. We wanted to kind of
was
set it
fun.
in stone. So yeah. So now you have a few more slides.
I do. No,
Let's go
not
ahead
leave.
and-
I don't want to leave webinar. I want to share the screen. There we go. So as a refresher, we have a drip tape starter kit, and that is including the 100 feet of drip tape, a single 10 PSI pressure reducer, which is this little light thing right here, a repair coupling, and 5 poly to barb drip connectors, 5 barb poly to drip connectors. Now we've done it. We have done it. We've had some fun and created a deluxe drip tape starter kit, which has a few more of the necessary items. Most specifically, being able to have the poly to PSI reducer. So let me go through this again. The deluxe drip tape starter kit has everything that's in the original kit, plus 5 more poly to drip barb connectors, an additional repair coupling, 2 of what we're now calling sub-zone on-off valves.
And those are for past your valve out into your bed. If you want to split the drip tape into 2 zones
They're
on,
right.
or 2 beds on 1 zone, you can do that. That's what those are for. That's cool.
Yeah. So after your timer controlled valve and you get out into where you're at, if you want to divide a zone into multiple subzones, this is what you would use. Greg, that was a great identifier for that, because when we were talking about that, trying to explain what it was, when you started calling it a subzone, it's like, bing, the light went on. That worked so
There you
well.
go.
So then we have a poly to PSI reducer, and I have a couple different kinds. I have this one right here, and then I have another one that is more common that we're going to be including, that is also the Loctite version.
And that what that's for is it takes you from the
PSI reducer.
the PSI reducer to poly tubing.
Yeah. And then we have 5 little goof plugs for just in case, you know, you put a barb in the wrong place and you want to move it, you have some goof plugs. It's a double-sided goof plug. You can go for the little barbs or the bigger holes. Gives you some options there. And our favorite punch tool that is the easiest to use, that of all the ones I've tried using, the right here in the little end, you lay your poly tube and then you squeeze it like a pair of scissors and it punches the perfect hole. Now, I have seen so many different tools out there. A lot of the easiest, the simplest versions that you might see at some of the big box stores is this like a small little knife that's supposed to do it, but it doesn't create a round hole. This punch tool creates a round hole, and I absolutely love it. And then
That's our deluxe.
Yeah, this is the deluxe kit.
Thank you, Janice.
Now, let's see, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So what you get is the drip tape with a bag of supplies.
You're fading out with the...
Oh, okay. I can't tell because I got questions in front of my face. You get the drip tape and you get a bag of supplies. That's your standard kit. And now we added on another bag of supplies and the punch tool, all of it put together. It is a fabulous little kit.
Yep.
All right. So that is the deluxe drip tape starter kit. It's both put together. Greg talked about using the special. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. So if you use the code URBANDRIP5, when you place your order for any orders over $50 or more, we will throw in an extra 5 of the poly barbs. So that's like a $5 or $10 value, Janice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we answer questions now.
Yeah, let's jump in and answer the questions.
So one of the early questions was the direction of the PSI reducer. So the PSI reducer has a little arrow in the white and has a little flow marker in the black. Doesn't show up on camera, but this does. This arrow is the direction. So the water source comes in this side and it goes that way out to your garden. So hopefully that helps. That was for Christine. Christine was asking about, she thought she might have installed it backwards. It's easy to do. I even caught Greg in it once. But yeah, I've done it too. So yeah, it's easy to do.
Jean wants to know what gauge is the pink electrical wire. The pink electrical wire, put in the chat the order link, would you, Janice, to order these products?
Sure.
Jean wanted to know the gauge of the electrical wire. First of all, I believe it was 14 gauge, so it needs to be strong enough that when you bend it, you can stick it in the ground. But the other thing about the electrical wire is it's one wire inside. Some of those copper wires have multiple little wires inside. You don't want that. Get this stuff that is one single wire. And I think it was either 14 or 16 gauge. Just go and to the hardware store and bend it and see if it's going to hold up getting poked into the ground.
All right. Now the link that you would go to is our shopping cart. You can get to our shopping cart from our website. You can just go up to the top and it says shop, or you can go directly at store.urbanfarm.org. And you can add /irrigation, or you can just look up irrigation from our general store area.
Cool. Jillian says, is it better to lay the tape with the holes going up or down? Yes.
I have different sections doing different things. I do always have one little section where I can see the drip happening. That way I can kind of inspect it and see how it's working. But normally most of mine is buried and it just comes out. So it doesn't really matter.
Susan says, so the holes clog from the mineral deposits in the inline 1/4 inch tubing. Yes, that is one of the miracles of drip tape. Is the way that the drip tape works is that every time it turns on, it flushes the holes and they do not clog. I had my system set up for 6 or 7 years in the front yard of the urban farm, and the urban farm is in Phoenix. It's got heavy minerals in the water, and mine never excuse me, mine never clogged.
Inga says, does the drip tape need to be level or can it handle a slope? Yes, it can handle a bit of a slope, but not extensively. If you can run your drip tape a little parallel to the slope, it works better, because basically what you're working with is gravity. The line will fill up completely and then it'll have enough pressure to start bringing out. But what will happen if you're on a slope is that the downslope end will be the part that gets the last of the water as it drips out.
Right. The other cool thing about drip tape, different, and I said this earlier on, different from drip irrigation is that before the tape starts dripping, the entire system has to fill. So you get even pressure at the beginning of the system and at the end of the system. Yeah.
It fills up quite quickly. I mean, it will just depend how long your line is, but it will fill up quite quickly. And that the intensity of the pressure is distributed across the whole stream. So unlike when you have what is commonly called spaghetti lines, where the water will come out in the beginning of the line with more pressure, more water will come out in the plants at the beginning of the line than at the end of the line. The drip tape is spread out effectively across the whole thing.
So there's a couple questions about the chlorine filter. How often do you change the chlorine filter? Why don't you go ahead and answer that, Janice?
Okay, so the chlorine filter, inside the filter is a handy little cartridge. This is the KDF cartridge, and there's no direction on this. You just put that straight in and twist it back in. The filter inside, it really depends on the level of chlorine and contaminants in your water. So most people shoot for about a year. If you have a city that has a lot of issues and is using chlorine a real heavy amount, then it'll go through faster, or you'll use it faster. The best way to identify this for yourself is to grab a chlorine pool testing kit. You can order those online, or you can order some, if you have pools in your area, you can get a pool store. Just test it every once in a while. And once you start to see chlorine, trace chlorine, then you know it's time to replace.
Right, exactly. And then Kathy wants to know, do I need a chlorine filter if we're on a well? You do not.
Not
If
unless
you're
you
on
put chlorine in your well.
Exactly. If you're on a well, like we're on a well here in Asheville, North Carolina, we have our own filtration system set up. So that, and it was a bit more expensive than $60 to get that done, but that makes us have safe water here. So you probably, if you're on a well, you probably don't need it.
You probably don't. However, like we did say before, the KDF filters will remove lead and iron and chromium and mercury. Up to 99% of the water soluble lead will be removed, and other toxic heavy metals. So if you are concerned about that coming out of your well, a test, you know, you can pay for a test to see what's in your well. That can give you some real eye-opening awareness as to what the quality of your water is. And you can see whether or not you need a KDF filter.
Barbara says she already set up a drip system. Is this an easy conversion? Yes, probably, but you have to completely convert it. You cannot have drip irrigation and drip tape on the same zone. So just know that you need it on, you need a different zone. It's probably going to be easier, Barbara, to add a zone for drip tape. That's what Janis did.
Yeah, I actually, like I told you earlier in the video, I had the yard that was getting watered mostly by hose, but I really wanted to spread the drip tape across the whole section. And I had a watering system out there, and I just started a new zone and it pulling out the old drip irrigation completely.
Carla has an interesting question. Can you leave the system on the ground in the winter up to -40 degrees? The plastic tubing, the drip tape would work fine. It's the -40 degrees with water in pipes that cracks the pipes. But if you turn off your drip tape, you know, there's no water in it. It deflates. And so I would guess that would be okay.
Well, we
I
had
want you
other
to,
people. I'm sorry.
what I'd want you to do, Carla, is buy a kit from us and experiment with us and let us know.
My answer that I have heard from those who do live in areas with snow is that it is fine as long as they don't run water through when there's snow there. You're going to want the thicker tape, not the thinner tape. And we don't carry the thin tape. We've got the 15 millimeter right now.
Let's see. Susan says, I'm on a well that is filtered, but my inline drip tubing keeps getting clogged. Yes. Switching to drip tape will help a lot, because the way the drip tape is designed, and I said this earlier, is that when it turns on, the salts flush out. It's magical. It really is cool.
Sydney's question is great. Sydney says, most of the examples were of relatively short runs or raised bed gardens. Would this be applicable to larger, more mature trees greater than 10 feet? Or maybe, yeah, greater than 10 feet wide trees and larger spaces? Is there a limit to how long a drip tape run you can do?
Ooh.
Go ahead.
Yes, it is a complete. In fact, this is a product for farmers, and you can go up to 600 linear feet with it.
Now, the reason that I selected this for my trees is twofold. One, I had clay soil, which was really proving difficult to be able to put the water on in a slow way so that it would soak in down deep to where the roots were, because I need it to go slow so the clay can work its way through, the water can work its way through clay. And two, I didn't want to just water in tiny wells. I wanted to create an entire wet area. I needed the whole area to be nurtured with the water so that I could grow stuff, because I didn't want little tiny tree wells with little bitty plants around the trees. I wanted everything to be green back there. So that twofold element gave me the idea to go for the drip tape. Does that answer all those questions already?
Well, there's one more. Judy says, I just converted my grass front yard into a pollinator garden. Good on you.
Yay.
Can I use drip tape for this? You can absolutely use drip tape for it. That's a perfect use for drip tape.
Yes. This whole thing is that you just lay it out in straight lines.
Right. All right.
Kathy says we have a filter inside for all the inside water, but not on the outside. Well, if you have the chlorine, you're going to want to use a chlorine filter for your garden. Although I think Kathy was the lady that said she's on a well. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
Now, if you have chloramine, which is different than chlorine, it's different. The KDF filter needs to be a higher with a combination of a carbon filter. There's a combination of filters that you're going to need. I just want to put it out there. If you have chloramine, which is some cities are using, a few of them, not too many, you'll need something in addition to the KDF filter.
There you go. You want to bring our special slide back up, Janice?
Yeah, I can go right back to that now that I have my slides set up right.
Jillian says thanks. She
Am I in
has
the
to
right
go,
one?
but she appreciates our information. Cool.
All right, so we're going to add the link below here in the recording, but you use the code URBANDRIP5. And if you spend $50 or more on drip tape supplies, you can get 5 poly drip barbs free.
Cool. And you have a couple more slides, don't you?
Here we go. Are you seeing them?
I am.
Okay. For a moment there, I thought they weren't there. So you go to store.urbanfarm.org for all your drip tape supplies and filters. And we are shipping next week. At the time that we're recording this, we'll be starting to ship next week. I'm going out of town this weekend.
Perfect. And there's one more slide.
There we go.
There it is. Thank you so much for joining us today. We do a lot of free education, and we believe in the free education. And then if you want to support us by buying supplies from us, that helps a lot. If you're just here and want to learn and you want to support us, if you go to urbanfarm.org/support us, and you can throw a little love that way to us if you'd like, and we appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, wait,
All right.
Ruth says, do you have a picture of the valves with the hose leading to the raised bed? Valves with the hose? Are you talking, Ruth? I'm going to need a little bit of thing. Are you looking for the valve, the timer valve, or the on-off valve?
Why don't you send us an email on that?
Yeah, we'll send you something.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
That's Greg@urbanfarm.org, or Jan is JANIS at urbanfarm.org. All right, crew, store.urbanfarm.org, and
Happy
thanks for
summer.
listening. Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.